there was something which was very particular about the way we built the company, which is until there were 200 employees in the company, we had no management, no managers. So all communication was direct. Founders, people, it was like one big team.
Some companies are built by ambition, others are built by necessity. And today's conversation is about the second kind. Olivier Gaudin didn't set out to build a multi-billion-dollar company. He and his co-founders just wanted to fix the pain of bad code. From that point of friction came SonarSource, a bootstrapped, quietly compounding product used by millions of developers and 75% of the Fortune 100. In this conversation today, we talk about how Olivier followed pull instead of push, how he stayed obsessively close to their users, and why culture, not process, is what scales best. From answering every forum post in the early days to building a global team without a single manager until 200 people, this is a masterclass in building with conviction. If you want to enjoy more of our content and dive deeper into startup land, check out our twice-weekly newsletter at followthegradient.io. On Tuesdays, we share a rundown of all things entrepreneurship. On Thursdays, we share exclusives from our podcast guests. And now, enjoy. Yeah, so Olivier, very nice to be here. Different setting also for us, I think also for you. So let's go back to the early days of SonarSource, when you guys were just three founders somewhere in a room in an office in Geneva. How did you guys make sure back in the days to stay close to the customer and to really be connected to actual problems users have?
I think that's a good question. I think my answer will be very specific to Sonar, given what we do and what we were doing. So basically, for us, it all started from we have a problem in our day-to-day life, and we're trying to solve it. Three of us, we know each other. We talk about this, and we are like, okay, we do very different things. Like I was leading a small tech team of pretty junior developers. My partner was working as a consultant for a bank, trying to get to CMMI level 3. And the third one just thought the way we do development sucks. So but we all wanted to do something in the domain of the quality of the code. We needed that for the three things we were in. So it all started by we are trying to solve a problem for ourselves. A lot of things we did just were like a consequence of this, which is we decided to go for an open source product because we were living in the world of a Java developer, and a Java developer does not buy anything to do coding. It had to come for free, basically. At the time, there was this Maven thing to build project, etc. So we were all on the Maven mailing list because we wanted to know what's happening. So we started to talk about what we were doing there. And some people said, oh, this is nice. I tried it, but I think what you have is a bit better. So I'm going to use what you have. Some other people say, hey, keep going, guys. We're going to use what you do, etc., etc. So I think for us, it was very naturally that we entered the world and we started to create this kind of community actually not on our own forum, but on other people's forum. We started to have something. And then these Maven people, we asked them, hey, I don't know, maybe it's a bit too techy, but when you build a product with Maven, you do Maven and then you call a command. And we ask, would it be possible to have Maven Sonar, column Sonar, which would be kind of super simple to call our product? And they say, sure. So we got that. So we got a lot of visibility. So it's really how it started on. And then the way we have developed product was we never considered we were like a tech company. We always considered we were a product company, which is very, very different. We were not building technology that then we try to get people to use. We were building a product, and the technology was really coming at the service of the product. So all conversation with community, with users, with customers were around the values that we deliver and how we build it, what technology we use, etc., etc.
Were there like individual super users, you would say, or really champions who were heavily using the product and were driving it? Or did you somehow passively monitor how the community is reacting to what you do?
No, we were really managing the community. So it was not like people answer to people. It was very much people are coming to us. We start a conversation, but we start a public conversation. So anybody can get into, provide their opinion, etc., etc. Were they super users? Yes or no. Like, yes, there were people more active. At certain time, but I would say not like super users. It's not like we built that for one user. It was like, they were like maybe at any point in time like 10, which were more active than others.
Did you, and because I think we're going to later on go to the scaling part, but in the very early days, I think many founders also ask themselves, okay, do I have traction or not, right? How does it feel like? They want to kind of have an objective statement, I don't have traction, or I do. So looking back now, what would you say was the point where you felt there's something that actually makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's a very subjective topic. I would say, which is, I don't know if, I think each company need to decide how do they measure impact. Basically, for us, we were very mission driven, which was like, there was no consideration around exit valuation. We didn't raise any fund. We only raised 8 years after we started. We were highly profitable, and we did it because we didn't know how to go big in the US and go to market, etc. So it was very much like, hey, we just would like to make some revenue so that our spouses don't have to assist us for the rest of our lives. But we are super happy to do what we do. So it was really our metric was really adoption, and the level of interaction we had on this community forum was kind of I think our main fuel on a daily basis. We saw more and more people using, we saw more and more downloads, we saw more and more visits to our website. So for us, it was like, okay, we are on the right track. The feedback we got was, we're going to start to use this. Hey, this is cool. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? It was like people were like in it. And for us, this was a good sign. We also knew we had to develop something that we could sell. So we had clear goals with this. We knew we had a year basically without revenue. And then after that, it would be like, wife would say, no,
it doesn't work out anymore.
Yeah, well, it's a bit too risky for the family, basically. For us, it was like the elephant in the room. We need adoption. Unless we have adoption, there is no future for what we are doing. It's even for us. Even if we could make a living out of like 2 customers who pay us like 10 million per year, I don't think we would have continued. This is not what we were after. We were really after changing the way people do development.
At what point did this change in the sense of that you hired more people and that you started to deliberately build a team, a smaller team?
Yeah. So mentioned it earlier, we didn't raise money. We had to be profitable. There is no choice. So we started to hire people when we started to have revenues. Yeah. So we founded the company at the end of 2008. At the end of 2009, we launched our first commercial product, which was extremely successful, but extremely successful meant, I think we sold like 5 licenses within 2 months in 2009. And each license was 1,800 euros. So, but that was a revenue. And the next year we continued. 2010 on in September, we had enough money. We had enough revenue that we could ask ourselves the question, okay, should we increase our salaries or should we hire people? And we decided to hire 2 people. We hired our first 2 people 2 years after we started the company.
Wow.
And this is really cool.
Yeah.
When you are hiring people with the money that you generate. I have never been in a company where you raise fund and you pay people out of somebody else's money, but I don't think it feels that good.
Yeah. And then 2 years after that, you hired the first 2 people. How did it roughly go there? Like the next hires, when did they come in?
So we hired 2 people, then we hired somebody to take care of all admin stuff, plus people asking for evaluation, quotes, licenses, etc. It was not like thousands of people, but if you accumulate you need to take care of the office, you need to take care of the paperwork, you need to take care of this. We wanted to have somebody who works on this. We hired more developer in 2011.
Yeah.
So probably I would say at the end of 2011, there were like 10 people in the company. So very, very slow start. But if you think about it, it might have been a 3-digit growth in terms of number of employees in 2011.
Yeah, absolutely.
We moved from 4 to 10 or 11. So that huge growth for us.
Once you had a small team, like How did you make sure that you stayed connected to the customer? Did you have specific meetings, rituals? Was it kind of a structure chaos? You make sure you're all sitting in the same room, you have a direct line. How did this play out?
So I think customers was a little bit of an exception. Customer, we call customer what paid customers, but most of our customers for the product were actually free customers. So the community forum was the main point on. We had strategies there. It was chaotic but very organized, which is anybody can answer. We want to answer everything pretty quickly, etc. And we had always somebody watching, making sure that everything gets answered. So it was like a turning role, but I think I did a lot of it. The principle we when we created the company very quickly, the principle was there was one guy taking care of all product. There was one founder taking care of all product, one founder taking care of all engineering, and I was taking care of everything else. And as soon as something was too much for me, we were hiring somebody to take over some. So it could seem very chaotic, but it was a system basically. We had a system in place and we knew what we needed to do.
At what point did this then started to become difficult? Like at what point did you experience, okay, we are coming from this structure chaos, which seems chaotic, but it highly makes sense, to, okay, this doesn't work out anymore because we have too many clients per employee or something like that, or we have too many employees, right? When did you think we need something different?
Many times. I mean, I think the single constant was change.
Yeah.
Which is we were constantly going through changes, changing the way we organize on the development, on the product, on the go-to-market, even if it was very small for the company, etc. But we only change when we needed to change. So we had that philosophy, which is we should wait as late as possible to make changes, not try to build for in 5 years, but solve the problem. And of course, when we solve them, we don't solve them for the next 2 days. We try to do something which will last a couple of years, but we knew there was no point to try to plan too much in advance. And also we knew that we didn't know what we needed, what we would need. So we try to really spend our energy where there would be the biggest impact.
How did the first 50 hires look like in terms of the different roles?
50. That's a good question. So when was 50? Okay, 50 hires, probably 60-70% engineers.
Yeah.
A couple of people who looked after sales, maybe like 5, but not really salespeople. Maybe we had a salespeople when there were 50 of us. One sales in the US to cover the US. Then like 4 or 5 what we call sales operations, which are like really sales admin who just everything was incoming. So they basically handle requests from customers, drive them through the process. I think we had one guy as a sales engineer, but more like professional services, helping customer to do this, to do that. 2 guys in product, 2 guys in support, commercial support.
So in the end, also very product driven, right? And very customer centric. I mean,
product. And to an extent where at some stage it was too much.
Yeah.
I think we have had many struggles that we solve, like on engineering, testing, blah, 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 blah. But the most difficult one to solve are not these ones. These ones are easy to solve because nobody is resisting the change. I mean, the tests are the tests. If you spend enough time, you're going to write enough tests. But when you need to change the organization, this is more difficult. We had a couple of points where we struggled. We realized our organization didn't work anymore. So when we started up to 15, 20 people, it was super easy, which is when people join, everybody was close enough that people started to pick what we need to do. We help them, we spend time with them, etc. So they are like really in immersion with us, and they got it by watching, doing, getting feedback, etc. And when we reach 30 people, I still remember this, which is one day I realized I was talking to somebody who joined like 6 months ago, and we were using the same words for everything, but it didn't mean the same thing, which is like he was telling me stuff with our usual vocabulary, but it did not use it for what I meant, basically. And I was like, oops, I think we have a little disconnect here, which is people are picking stuff, but they don't understand the philosophy behind. And we decided to do like a little onboarding program for people rather than we push them in the water and they learn how to swim. Yeah. We decided to have like a bit more structured thing. We had a second time right after our first investment, so after 8 years, where we got the investment. On 2 weeks later, I called the investor and say, hey, we're going to freeze hiring. And I said, why? I'm like, we have this disconnect. And it was 50 people. We had 50 people and we had a disconnect again. We didn't take it. We were hiring too quickly and we didn't take enough time to onboard people. And at that stage, it doesn't forgive, basically.
Let's go. I mean, maybe with all these learnings you have now, how did you manage to, or let's say, I mean, maybe this is also a constant problem, right? Which you continuously have to work on. But how do you deal with this disconnect? Because this disconnect is, I think, something which so many companies have.
Yes.
I mean, which is normal, right? There's 30 humans working on something and it's super hard to keep them aligned.
Yes.
But what is your biggest learning point on working on that?
I think my biggest learning point is you should constantly watch whether you can feel this disconnect or not. I don't think there is any silver bullet or grandmother recipe to solve this. Especially, I mean, if everybody is in the same office or if you are like around the world, it's a very different problem the way you solve it is also very different. So I don't think I learned many things you can do to solve it. So I've got a toolbox, but to me, the biggest learning is this is something you need to watch. And when you start to feel a disconnect, you need to do something about it, basically. I suppose that's my biggest learning.
And were you back in the days all in the same location?
Of course.
Yeah,
okay. That was
pre-corona and like years pre-corona.
Another era.
Like pre-Zoom and MS Teams.
It's not exactly right. We had a small office in France, but just across the border. So it was easy to reconnect people.
Now you hinted on it. At one point, you guys really started scaling up, or at least also going to different markets. You wanted to go to the US. So how did this play out? Was there a specific point where you said, okay, now we're going to deliberately hire people for the expansion and for penetrating different markets? Was it by accident because you had user communities there and then you kind of moved afterwards, right? How did this play out?
I don't think I'm going to answer your question, but I don't think there have been many accidents at Sonar. There had been a lot of luck. I'm not going to deny this. I mean, you need to do things right, but you also need luck. But I think what we have done was, in generally very intentional. So not many accidents. Probably a couple of accidents, but not that many. No, I think, so from day one, for us I don't think we were any like arrogant or like overconfident or whatever, but for us, it was like, we have no reason we want to avoid any friction. This thing is a thing for developers. There are developers around the world. So everything we do is in English, like three French people. Okay. All conversation in meetings, they were in French. Okay. We had no reason to make our days painful, but everything we write is in English. When we started to sell our product, we were in Switzerland, but we were like, okay, if I'm an American and I want to buy this product and the price is in CHF, I'm going to wonder what this saying. So it had to be US dollars or euros. We picked euros just for like intuition that we felt that Switzerland was closer to Europe than from the US. And we wanted to avoid some disconnect between the amount of money that we are getting and the real value of that money. And so it was not a bad choice. Also, eventually euro and CHF diverge. So to come back to your question, our first customer was a US company. Our second customer was a US company. Our third customer was a French company, Global Capgemini. So global was what happened. It's not like we triggered it, but what we realized after a few years is we were doing about 30% of our business in the US, which is cool. But when we looked at not our competitors, but our peers in our ecosystem, they were doing like 70 in the US, and they started from the US. So we felt something was a bit off for us. And where we solved it was we somehow found a salesperson in New York City who worked from there as a consultant, and we could see the guy in 6 months was pretty successful, which is we could see little by little our ratio of US sales to increase. So we learned basically that we were in Europe, so we think as European, we go to European conferences, etc., etc. So it's fairly easy to sell, not that easy sometimes to German because we'll ask lots of questions, etc.
Yeah.
But generally, we are culturally connected to people. In the US, slightly different. And we saw that guy successful. So we started to understand, hey, we're going to need local presence if we want to do better in this country. So we had that in mind.
And in retrospect, what type of hires made the biggest difference in this going global, let's call it?
So I think there is I will make two answers. When you want to start, you need individual contributors. Like you need a couple of people to do it, and you need to be connected to these people. So I flew to New York for 2 weeks initially to spend time with a guy we hired. And by the way, the guy is still with the company. So has been there for 13 years now. And he's a goat, but he's going to stay the goat forever because now it's big go-to-market. So nobody will match what he has sold for the company. And then once you want to expand, you need a manager, which is initially we started to hire random sales, but the first one worked well. The second one was okay. It's okay, but compared to the first one, but also we didn't spend as much time because we felt it should work without us spending time, which is not true. So hiring a manager to be accountable for that part of the world is key.
How did you manage the hiring and finding the right people? Because I mean, all this was, I guess, let's say, this crazy LinkedIn bubble where you can shoot out some videos and found a brand and then everybody finds you, or,
Can you do that?
Apparently, I think. So you were starting out from Geneva.
Yes.
You built a community, or you had traction from the US.
Yes.
But then finding salespeople or maybe other people, how did this go?
Luck. For that first guy I mentioned, actually, that guy reached out to us. He was working for another company which was also doing a bit of quality, but more like for governance in companies. And he said, he's a good sales guy. He sold himself basically to us. He said, I'm doing this for this other company. I see you everywhere. Everywhere we go, you guys are there. I don't want to work for number 2. I want to work for number 1. And we were like, okay, are you okay to work for free because we have no money? He said, I cannot do that. I say, hey, why don't you come back in 1 year? Maybe we will have enough money. Hired him. It went super well. The second one didn't work out. The third one didn't work out. The fourth one worked out. So I would say random. To the best of our ability, we thought these were good guys, etc. But it was random. For the next phase, which was a scaling, Inside Partners, who is our historical investor, was key to that. They introduced us to a couple of guys who had worked in like high velocity software business before, etc. And then it was mostly like a relationship match, which is we trusted Inside that these guys had the right skills, and we then needed to make sure that we would be able to establish a good relationship.
For that phase, which roles made then the biggest impact?
For us, it was the VP of sales that Inside introduced us in Austin. That's why we opened offices in Austin. And then the guy builds a team over there.
Yeah, okay. How did it play out then with the disconnect, right? I mean, you spoke about a disconnect or these constant things you need to manage in terms of keeping people aligned.
Yes.
Now, Austin, US, I don't know, East Coast, Geneva, France.
East Coast was only one guy.
Okay.
So it was really a little bit in France, a lot of people in Geneva on this new thing, which is growing in Austin. And so the first thing we did with this VP of sales, we brought him in Geneva for 4 months. So he moved with wife, kids, spent the time in Geneva. And I think it was, again, out of intuition, but it was a really, really good decision because he could see how we operate. He could understand. We spent a lot of time together. So when he went back to the US and started to hire people he knew, he could guide them. And these people also came to Geneva. We used to have like a 1 month in Geneva for all employees who we hired, which was stopped by COVID. And it really made a difference after COVID, which is it took much longer for people to dare talking to people in Geneva, because Geneva was a big part and it was operating all day. And then when people started their day, in Geneva, they were finishing their day, so they had to catch up quickly. It was really hard for these guys. But the fact that they had made friends in Geneva, made it easier.
So that means you flew people in for the first month, coming to Geneva,
Yes.
connecting with people, feeling the vibe,
Yes.
and then they went back to the world and...
Correct.
Yeah.
And one thing we changed in this is that initially on day one, they started in Geneva. But we realized that when they go back in Austin, they knew nobody.
Yes, makes sense. Yeah.
They belong to the Geneva team. What we did eventually, we said, hey, first week in the office.
Yes.
So people connect, but they don't really have time to start doing something. Then they fly to Geneva for 1 month. And then they fly back. They have their connection there. They made their connection in Geneva. So we found it was much, much better. And just one last thing on this Austin. After a while, we also realized that initially we expected to have like a company culture, like one. But after a little while, because of that guy who is really like this guy who is really well equipped in soft and hard skills, that guy started to nurture some specific culture in Austin, which is there was a company culture. There were certain values, ways of doing things, ways of talking about things, approaching problems, etc., which are like non-negotiable. They are like SonarSource. But there were also variation or like a second part of the culture, which was Austin specific. I was flying a lot to Austin, and somebody who learned about things by observing, and I started to observe this, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And we also had the French office, which had a culture, but it was like a historical, so we didn't really observe that much. It was more like we were in it. So we started to declare, to make it like a ritual with everybody that, hey, different offices will have different cultures, but we have a common...
And did you have then like deliberate rituals, structures in terms of meetings, or, like everybody comes together for Christmas or something like that to really keep people connected?
Yes. And they still, it's interesting because they are so deep, they still operate today. So a couple of things I'm going to mention. One is a Friday demo. So half an hour. So the principle is, this is half an hour happening on Friday at 4:30. People connect. Whoever wants to share their screen and show what they have done during the week can do that. So sometimes it's a bit messy, but it's organized mess, and it's part of the ritual. It has to be less than 1 minute, no slides. It's no advertisement or communication. You have to show something.
Yeah.
And it's pretty energizing, and it also sometimes it triggers ideas, keeps people kind of aligned with what's happening. It's become very, very big now. It's 800 people. So I think people are getting less out of this, but when you see finance who say, hey, we have put in place this new stuff to manage whatever, you see sales administration who say, hey, now we can process invoices directly from Salesforce. That's really cool. It's very energizing for everybody. We also have something which we call the Grand Route, French word. We kept that name because Americans struggle so much to pronounce it, where we fly everybody to Europe. It used to be we fly everybody to Geneva. We get everybody to Geneva, which was like small team flies to Geneva. And then we spend a week somewhere, take a bus. We go somewhere people don't know where. The only thing they know is going to be less than 4 hours bus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we spend a week there. It's like a mix of team building, partying, and work also. And this is where we say, and then we get on stage, we get teams. Each team comes, they prepare the slide. There is no like, there are reviews, but if you want to present something, you present something, you're going to be on stage in front of the whole company. People come, they say what they achieved the previous year, and they say what they are going to achieve the next year.
How would you now say, since you've grown and you're now close to 800 people, how is the culture in terms of staying close to the customer? Because I mean, obviously, at some point you also need like structures, and you get in people who expect something different, right? In the very early days, you have people who want to hustle, but you can't expect a crazy hustling culture from someone who joins an organization with 800 people. I mean, how has that been playing out?
So I think, let me tell you a quick story. I think there are two parts of this, and I will tell you a quick story. So in July 24, I decided to step down from CEO position, and then I took a sabbatical. I went to do lots of trekking and stuff. And came back in December and I decided to rejoin as an individual contributor, the company. Unusual, but I wanted to try. So the CEO says, that's great. So you are coming to Grand Route. Grand Route is in January. We keep January because it's cold, rainy, foggy. So people don't enjoy it so much. And that's why we keep that month. And he says, you're coming to Grand Route. I'm like, okay, sure. And then he comes on and say, hey, would you be okay to go on stage? Somebody will interview you for 15 minutes and you can talk about what you have done, why you are coming back, etc., etc. I'm okay, sure. We don't prepare. And there is this chief of growth, really nice guy, like him a lot. He starts to interview me. And this is happening right after a presentation from the CEO who says, we have to be more customer focused and customer centric, which is historically, we haven't been very customer centric. We need to really listen much more to what our customer needs to make our product evolve, et cetera, et cetera. And I listened to that and I was like, hey, that makes a lot of sense. And then I go on stage. The guy is a bit nervous because it can be a little bit unpredictable in my answers sometimes. And he's like asking questions. And he said, it's going great. And then he makes a comment and he says, I didn't know whether that would be my best moment at Grand Route or my worst moment at Grand Route. I said, I think this is my best moment. And then he asked, what were the pillar to build SonarSource? And I answer on a very conventional answer. And then I say, and also we never listen to our customer. And I think that was a big part of the success. And I see the guy freezing and I say, okay, but that was initially. Now we need to listen to customers. And I actually think this is very true, which is, first off, we never put a bigger weight on the paid customers that we put on a free customer.
Yeah.
Which is that, and sometimes it's really hard when you have this one guy who say, this customer who is paying us $1 million would like this. And we're like, sorry, it doesn't make sense. The same way we would say this random guy on the community list came on, is asking for this, doesn't make sense. So we really try to stay away from really being driven by what revenue we could make. Of course, we wanted to make revenue, we need to pay the bills, but revenue should be a consequence of all the good work we do, rather than we do specific changes to make more money with specific customers. This is like mainstream practice, so it should fit for all customers, and eventually we decide what is the thing. I think also we were extremely connected all the time with our community list, people providing feedback, etc., etc. We were staying away from going on interviewing customers, hey, what would you like next, etc., etc. We were really driven by the vision. And to me, and I genuinely think that we went too far into this, which is we missed a couple of things which were starting to hit very large customers, because also people who are paying us money are also our largest customers. So because we try to not fall in the trap of doing it because they pay, we also miss some needs from large users, basically.
How would you then look at how do you make these decisions today, or have you made back then, that you kind of say, okay, maybe I ignore a very specific customer, an individual one, but on the other hand, I'm thinking implicitly about a business case in the long run for the market?
So we have tried several things. I remember at some stage we had like a monthly product meeting where the product team was coming like for half an hour, presenting what we have achieved, what we are going to do next, etc., etc. And then for half an hour, various teams in the organization, so sales engineers, support, even engineers from the company, came on, ask about specific things, whether we could do certain things, ask questions about the roadmap, etc., etc. So we try to really engage all stakeholders in some sort of a process. It was never really successful. I mean, it always starts well, but then I think it works well because initially we do it together with a bunch of people, and these people know why we are doing it, etc. And then people start to interchange. It's not the same sales engineer guy who comes to the meeting.
Yes.
And the guy is just coming and he thinks he understands the purpose of the meeting, and he starts to push hard. And everybody like, okay, if he's pushing hard, it must be super important. And then 2 meetings later, you realize, okay, it was actually not super important. It's just that the guy did not understand how we try to operate there, etc., etc. So it didn't work that well. But I think part of the culture, part of the DNA was to really be customer use case focused. I cannot say customer focused after what I told you, but use case focused. And I remember we have had a couple of really good sessions with customers where I remember a specific change. We made a change, which is the dashboard in Sonar was configurable, which is people can choose their widgets, they can do whatever they want, etc. And when I was going to customers, it was like either they kept the standard or they added so many things that you are like, okay, and how do you use it? We are just happy that data is there and we can watch it if we want. So they were not using it. So we decided, hey, we are the expert. We know what they need.
Yeah.
So we are going to do like a fixed dashboard and everybody's going to operate out of the same dashboard because the customization was valueless in our opinion. And it's a lot of time to maintain, keep up to date, make sure it works, etc., etc. So we know people can react to this. So what we do is we say, hey, in 6 months, we are not going to have this anymore. And we start to put it in the version, in the next long-term supported. So it will be normal. Big reaction. Lots of people are coming to say, hey, if I cannot configure, I'm not using anymore, blah, blah, blah. So a little bit of pressure on what our reaction was to say, hey, okay, guys, can you explain to us how you are using this? I don't think we are going to change our decision, but we are going to make sure that the use case that you have can be supported. And we actually could, I think we had like 15, and we could actually already, with what we were doing, support 13. The 2 of them we could not. So we started to have like specific sessions with one of them was, I think it was a guy from Siemens. And the guy explained, and we were like, yeah, we are definitely missing something. So we added more features in the new thing. So we did our change. For us, it made sense to go to static dashboards, but we actually included new features that enables them to manage a use case.
There are so many interesting things there. I want to go back to one thing you said in the beginning. You said that, okay, you tried different formats, different meetings. Bottom line is they never work out in the long run. But what I'm trying to get at is these things can be very frustrating. Like for leadership, they can be frustrating for the employees. Like, was there a moment where you had the feeling the culture is going to crack because there's maybe too much frustration in the organization? Or how would you say you dealt with this? Because this, I think, is really for many people who are then in that scaling phase, no matter where they are, you kind of have the feeling you're constantly doing something wrong. And a lot is about how do I deal with that feeling and then address it.
So I think, and I don't recommend to do what we have done. Don't do it at home, as they say on TV. Yeah. There was something which was very particular about the way we built the company, which is until there were 200 employees in the company, we had no management.
Yeah.
No managers. So all communication was direct. Founders, people, it was like one big team. So when I say we decided to have that meeting, the we is not me and the founders. It was the people who were struggling, like with a support guy, with a sales engineer. They were complaining about the fact that things for paid customers are always coming after everything else. And I was like, yeah, I think it's a problem. This is a very natural way of doing it. We need to fix it. How could we fix it? So we start to discuss and we decide with the product people to have this. So it was very collaborative, extremely collaborative up until 200 people. And then, yes, we saw that it was going to crack because beyond 200 people, I don't know why, we seem to be very limited as human, but we start to not know everybody by their name and be able to spend enough time to know people. So it's difficult to have like one-on-ones relationship with everybody. So we started to introduce some managers on. We did it slowly. We did it internally. If I were to do it again, I would probably take a much more radical approach. A lot of communication, but I would be like, hey, okay, this is what we do, rather than trying to be very inclusive in the decision, which takes forever. On some people like it, some people don't like it, and eventually we don't care whether people like it. We need it, so we must do the transformation. So I think the period between 250 employees and 400 employees was a bit hectic. We had everything to build, basically. All the things we had not built before, we had to hire managers. We thought initially we could only have managers growing from the inside. And then I was like, not everybody can grow. So we also need some fresh views on what we are doing. So we started to mix, and that became pretty good, I would say.
Cool. I mean, I would love to continue, but I think time's up. So before we end, we have a section which we call rapid fire questions. So I just have 3 short questions for you, and you can answer with 1 sentence or whatever comes to your mind.
So short question, short answer, right?
Yes. First one, what's one product decision you made early that directly led to faster customer adoption?
Open source.
What's the most expensive mistake you made while scaling? What did you change the next day?
So it's not expensive. It's more, I think we could have generated much more value. It came at a cost, but product marketing. Didn't do product marketing when we introduced our second product. Mistake. Because for us, the second product was obvious with the first one. And we thought everybody would get it. People did not get it. So they still don't know that SonarLint, you should use SonarLint in your IDE. If you use SonarCube, it makes no sense to not use SonarLint, but we missed that completely.
You mentioned profitability in the early days. What's one thing a profitable company should always track weekly? Adoption, maybe.
No, yes, okay, yes, of course, but there is one. I mentioned profitability, but it was worse than profitability. It was increasing profitability, which is we struggle to hire enough, we struggle to spend enough, we struggle to grow our expenses faster than our revenue. So we didn't have to check anything. We knew we prefer to focus on hiring, building the product, etc., rather than watching how our profitability is. And it's a luxury problem, right? Which is it's very unusual thing. So that's why I don't really know. But adoption is definitely. I mean, you should be every time you push something, you cannot just push it. Go back in your cave and build the next thing. You have to push it. You have to see what's the reaction. You have to see whether people adopt it, and if they do not, there is no need to build the next feature. I mean, you need to solve that one and understand why people are not using it. Every time, I call it in French, we say the shallot race, which means it's like perpetuously doing the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, because it doesn't work. But hey, if it doesn't work, something must be broken.
Yeah, and you so often have the situation that from a product perspective, you would say once it's been deployed, right, we're done and we move on. But there's a post-release, and
yes,
you learn much more in the post-release than you do when you develop, right?
And also, once you release, this is where you can reshuffle your priority list, because you thought after that you should do X, Y, Z, but you actually realize people don't use it exactly as you expect, and you should actually adjust. We have seen, I know we are short of time, the last one. We have seen an example where we were doing this great new thing, but we were only doing it locally for one file. So for us, and it worked well. For us, it was like, the next thing we need to do is to make it cross files. Like it has to go through the whole application. And we were like, that's a hard problem. Okay. And people wanted to even develop that before we push it to our community. And we were like, no, we need to push it. We need to see what happens. We push it. And then the next week we get people say, hey, it doesn't work. False positive, false positive, false positive. And we have a developer who look at the case and say, no. It is a real problem. Here, look at so they send screenshots with arrows on it. They say, here, you have a problem. Sometimes they were false positive, but generally it was working fine, but people did not understand the problem. It was too complex to understand the problem, which is why we use machines to actually find them. So we stopped doing this cross-file thing. We say, hey, we don't need this. What we need is we need a way in our product for people to actually understand the problems that we found. Why is there a problem? And it was a completely different thing. And we were like, wow, that was really the right decision to push something, even if it's not complete. Because should we have not done this, we would have gone to the other thing and we would have even made it harder for people to understand.
Yes.
Pushing, listening, seeing what happened, super important. Short feedback loop.
Yeah. Super interesting. Olivier, I mean, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Last question, if people want to find out more about Sonar, about you, about your journey, what you guys are doing now, where can they find you?
So sonar.com for the company, I can be reached out on LinkedIn. I'm not a super public person, I would say.
Yeah.
I'm not like publishing all kind of things, but always happy to answer people who reach out.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Christian.
And this was another episode of our Follow the Gradient podcast.
And now we would love to hear from you. How did you like it? What should we improve? Do you have any suggestions, ideas, or dream podcast guests? Please let us know.
Thank you and see you again next week.